Have you ever experienced a loss so enormous that it felt like your world was falling apart? But to someone else, it was a victory worth celebrating. How did you react? Did you withdraw? Shut down? Did you find yourself angry at the other person, wondering how they could be so wrong-headed? As people, there are any number of reactions we might have to a challenging situation. And yet, what if just for a moment we chose to do something different? Let me take you back to 2016. It's the day after the presidential election, and I found myself at a small diner on the eastern shore of Maryland. Now, the owner of the diner was elated. His candidate had just won. I, on the other hand, was devastated. Not only had my party lost, but I was left wondering when we would be ready as a nation to usher in our first woman president. So I had a choice to make. I could choose to sit in my grief and build a wall between the two of us, or I could ask a question. And so I did. I looked at him and said, "What was so important to you about this election?" And his answer surprised me, because it wasn't about party politics or even the man himself. What he spoke about was wanting a better future for his children. More opportunities, secure housing, the ability to send them to college one day. These were all things I wanted for my own family. Where we differed, however, was in how to get there. Now, that conversation did not change how either of us voted or even our support for our candidates. But what did change for me was how I saw the world. It was a reminder that curiosity rather than judgment is the first step towards bridging across difference. And that's what I want to talk about today. It seems somewhere along the line, we've lost our ability to see our shared humanity. From an early age, we're socialized to group people into who belongs in my circle and who does not. Our brains are naturally wired to do this as a means of seeking out safety. But in a world where we're constantly told who's right and who's wrong, that instinct can be magnified. You see, we not only group people, we go this extra step to build walls between us. We start thinking that our views are objective, fair, and free from bias. And when we stop engaging with people who think differently, we can start relying on stereotypes instead of learning from real people with real experiences. Now, it's not uncommon today to be told, this is who you are, and this is what you should believe. Personally, I'd rather not have you decide that for me. But if this is true for me, then it must also hold true for those who disagree with me. Just think about it. How often do we let assumptions speak louder than the person standing directly in front of us? The good news is that there is a way out of this, and it starts with curiosity. Now, I've always been a deeply curious person. I was that child. I tugged on my mom's sleeve and I said, "But why, Mommy, why?" And that curiosity never left me, including in high school when a guidance counselor told me that anthropology, the study of people, culture, and connection, wasn't a real job, and I couldn't make a living doing it. She only prompted me to ask another question. Funny enough, today I make my living doing exactly that, studying people, culture, and connection. Curiosity brought me in 1997 to AmeriCorps, where I work with preschoolers on shaping their language and literacy skills. Now, I love this work, but I also started noticing something troubling. There was a persistent narrative emerging about who these children and their families were, what they could and could not achieve in life, and what success would ultimately look like for them. And they weren't necessarily positive. Yes, there were challenges, but the deficit was never in the children or the families themselves. It laid in the systems that created barriers for them and the stories that outsiders told about their futures. As I traveled around the nation working with different organizations, that pattern continued. There were people who were setting limits on these kids, and yet I knew otherwise. See, the kids I worked with, they were brilliant. They were funny, curious, ambitious. Their families often worked multiple jobs to ensure they had access to opportunities. And yet the assumptions that were being placed on these children were shaping the world's perception of them. Can you imagine the impact that would have on a child who's trying to figure out who they are and their place in the world? That experience shaped the work that I do today as an equity strategist and executive coach. It taught me that the stories that we tell about one another matter greatly. And the best way to challenge a false narrative is through curiosity and rejecting the urge to make assumptions. Take, for example, Daryl Davis. Daryl is a black blues musician who befriended members of the KKK while working at bars. When I first heard Daryl's story, he had convinced 200 KKK members to give up their white robes. According to NPR, Daryl's made a practice of collecting and saving these robes as a reminder of the dent he's made in racism by simply sitting down for dinner and a conversation. Now, I don't expect that the majority of us are going to find ourselves seated across the table from a Klansman. And that's not really the point. The point is that Daryl found a way to lean into curiosity that aligned with his skills, his environment, and his willingness to engage. So this isn't just about kids. This is about all of us. You see, at the heart of it, I believe we've grown afraid of one another. And when fear takes hold, we stop asking questions. We assume we know what the other person believes. We anticipate disagreement. And we brace for battle before a single word is even spoken. But if we want to change this, if we truly want to plant the seeds for a better world, we have to shift how we engage with one another. Because people don't typically shut down when they feel heard. They shut down when they feel judged. And I know I'm asking a lot at a time where the world can feel overwhelming. But we have to answer an important question. And that is, what is the cost to us of not choosing curiosity? So if you're with me, I'd like to offer 3 steps that we can take to build a practice of curiosity in our own lives. Number 1, we can start by saying, tell me more. Instead of assuming you know what the other person is thinking, ask them, what was important to you about this topic? Or how did you come to see things this way? To build a deeper sense of understanding. We can also get comfortable saying, I don't know. There's tremendous power in admitting that we don't have all the answers. Try instead. That's a new perspective for me. Can you share more? And tried and true is always to listen to understand rather than to respond. Too often we listen just long enough to form our rebuttal. Real conversation means setting aside the need to be right to focus on what's actually being said. It's an opportunity to reflect back to the person. So it sounds like what you're saying is that right? To move the conversation away from conflict. Number 2, we can expand our lens. If we only listen to people who think like us, we reinforce our worldview without ever challenging it. Make an effort to seek out unfamiliar stories. Read books, watch films, and listen to voices from communities and cultures that are different from your own. Ask yourself, whose story have I not heard, and what perspectives might be missing? And then, as we finish this, we can challenge our assumptions. See, we all carry unconscious bias. The key is to recognize it and be open to the idea that we may not have the full picture. So if you feel yourself getting ready to make a snap judgment, pause and simply ask yourself, what else might be true here? And number 3, build bridges, not walls. When we come across someone who says something misinformed or harmful, the instinct can be to shut them down. But shaming rarely changes minds. Instead of blaming them, call them in with curiosity. And I'm not suggesting to you that you engage with every in-person or internet troll that you come across. That's rarely going to be productive. But in a world filled with misinformation, it can be a practice in courage to lean into curiosity and conversation. So what might that look like for you? Because here's what I've learned. Hope doesn't happen by accident. It happens by choice. And curiosity is absolutely a choice. Curiosity is what turns debate into dialogue, misunderstanding into insight, and strangers into community. So I invite you to ask yourselves, how will you show up differently? And what assumptions are you willing to challenge? Because the world doesn't change in grand sweeping gestures. It changes through the everyday choices we each make. Thank you.